Who is the president?
Ako po, sir. Ganun po.
Okay, so ano ba natin ngayon? We continue the reporting.
Yes po. Yung continuation po ng Group 1 po. Executive.
Okay, so we continue the last two reporters for Group 1.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Group 2 will follow immediately. So that is Legislative Department, am I correct?
Yes, po, sir.
Okay, so let's continue the two remaining reporters for Group.
Ayun po. Iko-continue po namin yung report through a video presentation po ni yung isa po namin kasama kasi po may work po siya ngayon and nag-prepare na lang po siya ng video presentation po ng kanyang part. Ayun po.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Rafael Fitalvero, and I am here to report Section 17 through Section 19. Section 17 entails that the President shall have the control of all the executive departments, bureaus, and offices. He shall ensure that the laws be faithfully executed. Now, ang sinasabi na sa section na ito ay bilang head ng executive department, trabaho ni Presidente na i-maintain at i-manage ang buong branch na sumusunod sa rules and regulations. Now, may kita natin sa dalawang forma ang control ni Presidente over the executive department. Number one is the power of appointment, kung saan may kapangyarihan si Presidente na mag-appoint ng kung sino sa tingin niya ay nararapat at may kakayanan na gawin ang mga trabaho sa ilalim ng kanyang kabinete. Number 2 naman ay power of removal, as is, may kakayanan si Presidente na magtanggal ng kahit na sino sa kanyang gabinete kapag sa tingin niya ito ay incompetent na at incapable na silang gawin ang kanilang magawa. Now, merong tatlong sakop ang control na ito ng Presidente. Una, sasakop nito ang kanyang gabinete at ang mga members sa ilalim ng gabinete na ito. Pangalawa, sasakop din nito ang iba pang officers under the government. No? Labas man ito sa executive department, may kakayanan si Presidente na maintain at may manage ang mga taong ito. Ang hindi na lang kayang i-maintain or i-manage ay yung mga tao under ng Civil Service Commission. Now, it is also noted that the primary function of the President is to enforce law. No, isa ito sa mga tinuk-off niya nung bago siya umupo bilang Presidente ng Pilipinas at kailangan na masiguradong napapatakbo at naipapalakad ang mga batas na ito. Now, pangalawa naman na na-note sa libro ay ang function ng President is more of a mandatory work at hindi siya dapat tingnan nito bilang isang kapangyarihan. No, hindi po kapangyarihan ang pag-enforce nito at ito po ay mandatory na trabaho bilang isang Presidente. Ngayon po, ang law ay presumed na constitutional unless it was declared not constitutional. Okay, now let's go to Section 18. This section entails that the President will be the Commander-in-Chief of the Philippine Army or Armed Forces of the Philippines. Sakop natin Philippine Army, the Philippine Navy, the Philippine Air Force, Marines, and also the PNP, if I'm not mistaken. Now, in this section, it was noted that he may call out the Armed Forces of the Philippines, especially to prevent invasion, rebellion, and most importantly, to protect the nation and all of its people. No? May kakayanan si President na i-control ang armed forces during the peace times and war times. It was also noted in this section that without exceeding 60 days, may kapangyarihan si President na mag-declare ng martial law and isuspend ang writ of habeas corpus. Kapag isuspend si writ of habeas corpus, doon na magkakaroon ng warrantless arrest. Next, within 48 hours, yung Congress, by voting unanimously, ang kapangyarihan silang i-revoke itong declaration ni President at itong revocation ng President ay hindi dapat i-set aside. ang revocation na tong Congress ay hindi dapat i-set aside ni President. And also, the Supreme Court has the power to suspend or investigate the means of this declaration kapag may nagsampa ng kaso. Ngayon, within 30 days, kailangan gumawa ng decision sa Supreme Court at dapat ipaalam niya ito sa President, and kung necessary, kailangan i-revoke si declaration ng martial law and the suspension nga ng writ. Now, it also noted that the state of martial law or the declaration of martial law does not automatically suspend the Constitution. No? Mas pabor pa rin si Constitution, and nabibigyan natin ng assurance si Bill of Rights kung saan sinasabi na even though martial law, mas superior pa din dapat ang civil authority kaysa sa military authority. Kaya lang nag-declare ng martial law is para ma-ensure na mas ma-execute ni President ang kanyang mga gawain. Mas mabilis at mas may tibay. Now, the suspension of the privilege of writ of habeas corpus will only apply to those who are judicially charged with rebellion or is connected to acts of invasion. Dapat within 3 days, they are judicially charged. Now that the President as the Commander-in-Chief of the Philippines or Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, hindi siya sakop ng court-martial at hindi rin siya entitled sa military discipline. Na in the event of war, ay kapangyarihan si President na i-delegate yung magiging strategy ng Philippine Army o ng Armed Forces sa military experts. Pero siya pa rin yung magkakaroon ng final say kung ano yung gagawin ng buong Armed Forces. Now, bilang same ng power si Executive and si Congress, they share the power with the Armed Forces, kung saan ang Congress kasi ang nagsusupply ng money at gumagawa ng mga batas para suportahan itong Armed Forces. Kung saan also nakakatulong din or may say din si Congress during the declaration of martial law and also in the state of war. Now, there are conditions bago masuspend si privilege of the writ of habeas corpus. There are 2. Number 1 condition is there must be an invasion or rebellion, and number 2 is public safety must require the suspension. Mapapansin natin na yung pangalawa is medyo vague siya, kaya minsan nagagamit or pwede siyang gamitin na as an excuse para lang masabi na isuspend si privilege of the writ. Pero di pa naman siya nangyayari in the recent times, if I'm not mistaken. And also, there are also conditions bago mag-declare ng martial law. Una, kailangan mayroong invasion or rebellion at kailangan nalalagay sa panganib ng public safety. It is noted under this part na ang person arrested during the suspension of the writ must be released within 3 days kapag hindi siya judicially charged. During suspension of the writ, may kapangyarihan pa rin na mag-bail nahuli. Before we go further, let's define martial law first. Una, it can be defined as all the laws that have reference to and are administered by the military forces of the state. Pero sinasabi lang doon na ito daw yung mga batas na sinusunod ng mga militar. Now, pangalawa, in a strict sense, it is the law which is the application when the military arm does not supersede civil authority but is called upon to aid and execute the vital functions of the executive department or the vital functions of the government. Now, sinasabi naman dito, yung sinabi ko rin earlier na kaya lang naman nag-declare ng martial law ay yung pangunahing layunin nito is mas mapabilis at mas mapagtibay pa ang pag-execute ng government na kanyang mga gawain at hindi pa rin authority or hindi pa rin mas mataas ang authority military kay civil. There are restrictions on exercise of the declaration of martial law and the suspension of the writ. Una, sinasabi dito na there must be an actual rebellion and public safety requires the proclamation of the suspension. Pangalawa, the duration shall not exceed 60 days unless extended by Congress. Kung kailangan magpasa ni Presidente ng report or kailangan niya humingi ng extension for a period to be determined by the Congress itself. Pangatlo, sinasabi dito na kailangan magpasa ng report whether in person or in writing ng presidente sa Congress within 48 hours from the proclamation. Siyempre, kailangan explain bakit ba siya nag-declare ng martial law and ano yung goals nitong martial law. Now, for the number 4, the proclamation can be revoked by a joint voting of the Congress. It was already discussed earlier. And for number 5, Supreme Court may inquire into the sufficiency of the factual basis of the proclamation or suspension. So sinabi din kanina na may kapangyarihan nga sa Supreme Court na mag-investigate kung ano nga ba yung sense ng pagde-declare ng martial law and pagsususpend ng writ of privilege of habeas corpus. Now, lastly, the effects of a state of martial law are spelled out to be defined its extent. Next naman na natakal is the effects of the state of martial law. Una, on the operation of the Constitution, walang effect si martial law dahil hindi naman automatically nawawala si Constitution even though may declaration na ng martial law. Pangalawa, ang Civil Court and Legislative Department is also continuing to be functional. So, wala namang bagong kapangyarihan na ibinibigay sa presidente kapag nagde-declare siya ng martial law at may pantay-pantay pa rin sa tatlong branches ng government. Declared lang siya para i-assist ang civil government, hindi para palakasin ito. Ang effect ng martial law is yung jurisdiction of military courts and agencies. No? If civil courts still function, martial law doesn't authorize the conferment of jurisdiction on military courts. So, civil court pa rin ang pupuntahan ng sambayanan at hindi dapat lumalamang or sumasapaw ito si military courts unless necessary. Number 4 is the privilege of the writ. It does not automatically suspend the privilege of the writ. Kahit mag-suspend pa siya ng martial law, hindi automatically mawawala si writ of habeas corpus. Now let's go to Section 19. Section 19 entails that the President can grant reprieve, commutations, and pardons, remit fines, and forfeiture after conviction of the formal judgment. So sinasabi naman dito sa Section 9 na may kapangyarihan si Presidente na magbigay ng pardon at siya lamang yung may kapangyarihan nito under ng Constitution. Hindi siya pwedeng tanggalin sa Presidente kahit ano pang mangyari. Judicial Court may however make suggestions but the President has the final say pa rin. Pardoning power extends to all offenses. No, kahit ano pa yung kasalanan mo, pwede kang bigyan ni Presidente ng pardon. Now it was defined, the reprieve was defined on the book. It is the postponement of the execution to the death sentence to a certain. Commutation was also defined. It is the reduction of sentence imposed to a lesser crime. And also the pardon, an act of grace proceeding from the power entrusted with the execution of law. Also, amnesty was defined. Amnesty is it abolishes the offense of which one is charged, so that it may seem that the person released had committed no offense. Ang binibigay nito ay isang general pardon for a past offense. Usually, binibigay siya in favor of the certain classes of persons, those who are in need. Now, there are two kinds of pardon, absolute and conditional. Absolute, fully pardoned ka. Conditional, syempre, there are conditions pa din, hindi ka fully pardoned. May kailangan ka pang gawin and such. There are also limitations of pardon. Una, it may not be exercised for offenses in impeachment cases. Pangalawa, it may be exercised only after the conviction or the final judgment. Number 3, hindi siya pwede exercise over civil contempt, and no pardon can be given without the recommendation of the Commission on Elections. There are 3 effects of pardon. Una dito, it removes penalties and disabilities and restore him to his full civil privilege. Pangalawa, hindi na discharge his civil liability to the one who was wrong outside the powers of the President na ito. At pangatlo naman, hindi na ito nabibigay, or hindi natin nababalik yung mga offices, mga property, at mga karapatang na ibigay na dun sa kaso dahil nga dun sa consequences ng ganyang conviction. So, hindi necessarily babalik yung mga pagmamayari kapag nabigyan ng pardon. Now, since na-define si pardon and si amnesty, let's differentiate the two. Pardon is granted by the President alone, while amnesty was given by the Congress before or after conviction. Pardon is an act of forgiveness, while amnesty is an act of forgetfulness. Sa pardon, pinapatawad ka lang, pero sa amnesty, parang kinakalimutan na gumawa ka ng kahit ano paglabag sa batas. Pangatlo, pardon is granted for infractions of peace of state, while amnesty is for crimes against the sovereignty of the state. Now, pang-apat naman, pardon is a private act of the President, while amnesty, by the proclamation of the President, with the concurrence of the Congress, is a public act which the courts will take judicial notice. So sa pardon, si President lang pwede magbigay, while the amnesty, tatlong branches ng President or tatlong branches ng government yung dadaanan before magbigay ng amnesty. Okay, that was Section 17 to Section 19. If ever po may tanong kayo, please ask na lang po.
May
Or sa aking
I
mga groupmates. Salamat po, maraming salamat.
may I intervene? May I be given the chance to ask or propound some questions?
Sige po, sir.
Okay, so the specifically Section 17 and 18 talks about the conditions wherein the presidential power to declare martial law and to suspend the writ or the privilege of writ of habeas corpus. First of all, what is the definition of the writ of habeas corpus? The last reporter, may I inquire of the definition of the writ of habeas corpus? Again, I repeat, what is the definition of the writ of habeas corpus?
Sir,
Okay.
sir, pwede pong sumagot from other group po.
The reporter, the one that reported, because I think he's supposed to define the writ of habeas corpus.
Sir, hello po.
Yes.
Isa reporter din po. Sa pagkakaintindi po kasi, yung writ of habeas corpus, yun po yung requirement po na yung arrested person. Dalhin muna po sa judge sa court bago i-detain na. Ibigyan po muna ng search warrant bago hulihin yung ganun po.
Other definition? Who is the one who reported last? What's the name again?
Si Raf po nasa work po, kaya video na lang po yung present po.
Okay, because he did not define the writ of habeas corpus. Well, the writ of habeas corpus means to produce the body. And minsan nadidinig nyo, di ba? Suspended ang writ of habeas corpus. So, usually, pag may declaration ng martial law, no? So, sinususpend ng military, no? By virtue of the declaration of the president, the privilege, no? Kaya nga siya tinatawag na privilegio. So, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus. Okay, so nung panahon ng diktadorya, no, ni former President Marcos, maraming nangyaring violation, no, sa ating mga kababayan because of the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus during the 21 years imposition of martial law. So sinabi rin ng last reporter na walang nababago, no, sa kapangyarihan ng Pangulo. No, hindi totoo, no, na walang nababago. So dahil suspended ang karamihan sa mga liberties, no, o kalayaan ng mamamayan. The government imposes curfew among its citizen, no? Iba-iba lang ang oras, no, sa mga different local government units, no, but katulad ngayong may COVID, di ba? So the president did not declare martial law but impose a national condition or public health, no, because of the COVID pandemic. So lahat ng probinsya, no, mga city government, provincial government, and local government units, kanya-kanyang imposition ng mga curfew hours to suspend the mobilization, the movement of people from one place to another because there is an existing virus brought about by the COVID pandemic. Okay? So, delikado, no, pagka merong martial law. Dahil hindi lahat ng ordinaryong kalayaan na nagagawa ng tao ay pwedeng gawin. No? So maraming sinususpend. No? Yung mga kamag-anak nyo na critical to the government or aktivista, yan nga, di ba, may nag-red tagging na. So kaya masama yung red tagging din. Pag na-red tag ka na, yung military, susubaybayan ka na yan, no, and dudukutin ka. So, pag suspended ang writ of habeas corpus, hindi ka rin pwedeng pumunta sa korte because suspended nga. So, kapag ka nawawala kasi yung isang tao, dudulog ka sa korte, no, by invoking the right or the privilege of writ of habeas corpus. Oh, but when it is suspended, you cannot invoke it. You cannot enjoy the privilege of writ of habeas corpus. So, ang meaning nun, no, to produce the body. Ipakita, no, yung katawan ng tao kasi nawawala na siya for how many days, weeks, or months, or even years. No, yung sino ba yun? Yung Burgos na yun, no, yung student activist, no, until now, no, yung sinasabing allegedly pinatay nila Palparan, no, nila nasa Jarico. So yun, no. Okay, so The president has the power to appoint. That is a presidential power, but it carries with it the presidential prerogative of removal if the president lost already the trust and confidence to the appointees or to the appointed subordinate of the president. Okay? One of the power also falling under the executive department that was not stated is that the president enjoys presidential immunity from suit. Okay? Unless the president waives or gives his consent. Okay, it happened when President Cory Aquino accused publisher and to prove that Louis Beltran was lying, the president invited press people in his room in Malacanang and opened her room. Pinakita niya na wala namang ilalim yung kanyang kama, so paano siya magtatago? So Louis Beltran was convicted by court for a fake news, lying in his column. So that is one instance wherein the president waives her consent and become an ordinary citizen that she faced the trial in court and gave her consent to a criminal litigation. Okay? So who is the next reporter?
Ako po, sir. I will be reporting Section 20 and Section 20 to 22. I am Andrea Nagrampa.
Okay, you proceed.
To start, this section talks about the foreign loans that the President may contract or guarantee on behalf of the Republic of the Philippines with the prior concurrence of the Monetary Board and subject to such limitations as may be provided by law. Next slide, please. Ito po yung mga authorities ito yung mga authority na pwedeng mag-contract or mag-guarantee ng foreign loans on behalf of the country. First is the exclusive executive function. The President may contract foreign laws on behalf of the Republic of the Philippines without the need of prior congressional approval. When obtained, kung ino-obtain naman po ng mga private persons, natural or judicial, they may guarantee such loans ng kanila lang. There is possibly no official better qualified. Walang iba na pwedeng maging qualified na mag-contract or mag-guarantee ng loans bukod sa Presidente. The President is the official best supplied with information as well as the executive and legislative assistance to determine the advisability of obtaining loans as well as the capacity of the country for making good use of such credit. Next. Next naman is yung concurrence ng monetary board. The authority of the president is not absolute. Therefore, the contract or guarantee must be with the prior concurrence of the monetary board or the central bank. In our case, ito po yung Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas na is required to make a report to the Congress containing the matters mentioned. Bakit? Kasi yung Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas bilang custodian siya ng ating foreign reserves or yung pera, ng mga ngalaga ng pera ng bansa. It has the expertise to determine the reasonableness of the contract or guarantee and whether the proposed foreign loan is within the capacity of the country to pay.
May I intervene?
Okay po.
In your opinion, Ms. Nagrampa, is obtaining loans necessary or practical at this point for a country like the Philippines, wherein some country like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and other Asian countries was at the peak of their critical condition, wherein their foreign reserves was used to pay their loans, and their foreign reserve run deep at a zero negative level, and shortage of food and social necessities for their people was achieved because of so many loans.
To answer po the question, sa tingin ko po, no po. Kasi our country is kung basically mahirap po tayong bansa, and meron na po tayong mga existing na loans na palaki ng palaki and hindi pa rin pa nababayaran. And para po gamitin yung sinabi niyo kanina, yung example po na Sri Lanka, I mean, hindi po siguro practical na dagdagan pa yung utang, and based din po sa mga factors concerning yung pagtaas po ng presyo and yung palitan ng pera and yung pagtaas ng gasolina. I think hindi po siya ideal na magdagdag pa po tayo ng foreign loans.
And what options are available in your opinion if you will not contract new loans? Then what other options do you think?
Tingin ko po taasan yung buwis ng mga mayayaman.
Mayayaman, the rich only?
I think
Is it in violation of due process? Because under our judicial system, there should be no selective legislation. Why are you targeting only the rich? That is a grave violation of our judicial system, when the law should be not selective. Okay, so I'm just testing some of your
I think, sir,
articulation on certain issues. So that is an example of maybe what will be your finals examination. So you prepare for those kind of questions during your finals. Okay, so you continue.
Okay po. The next po is the report will guide the Congress in the enactment of whatever legislation it may deem necessary to protect the national interest. Para po bigyan kayo dito ng example is dati po ay nagkaroon ng malaking foreign loan na ginarantiya ng pamahalaan kahit hindi pa po siya pinapayagan ng monetary board. Kaya ito pong dahil po dun sa paggarantiya agad nun is nagkaroon siya ng adverse reaction sa ating ekonomiya. Malaki po yung balik niya sa ating ekonomiya at naapektuhan. Kaya naman po, it's important na nagdadaan muna to sa tamang proseso. Next. Next po is the checks by the Congress. The Congress may check such contracts. However, there are reasons for not requiring congressional approval for foreign loans kasi minsan po sa sobrang tagal ng process sa paggarantiya ng loans, hindi na po natin minsan kinakailangan pag-check ng Congress, or minsan naman the obstructionist Congress sa pinapatagal po nila yung pag-approve ng isang foreign loan dahil din sa political reasons. Next po, section 21. Dito naman pinag-uusapan yung treaty. No treaty or international agreement shall be valid and effective unless concurred in by at least 2/3 of all the members of the state. Para po bigyan kayo ng simple definition about treaty. A treaty may be defined as a compact made between two or more states, meaning a treaty may be bilateral or multilateral, including international organizations of states intended to create binding rights and obligations upon the parties. This treaty is also known as a pact, a convention, or a charter. Here are the steps to creating a treaty. First is the negotiation. The president alone has the sole authority because of secrecy, dispatch, caution, continuity, and access to information are essential ingredients in this task and in which the president alone possesses. Confidential matters are past and premature disclosures may not only cause serious embarrassment but may likewise imperil the successful accomplishment of the negotiations. Kaya po hanggat maaari, walang full disclosures ng mga negotiations at marapat na hindi pa muna ito ipaalam sa nakararami hanggat wala pa po yung final verdict or conclusion. Second is yung approval or ratification. No treaty or international agreement shall be valid and effective unless concurred in by at least 2/3 of all the members of the state. This is only logical kasi treaties and international agreements being part of the law of the land and
Of all the members of the Senate.
Opo, Senate po.
Hello? May I intervene?
Sige po.
So no, yes, you always state the state eh. So it should be the Senate.
Ay, opo, sorry.
You always
Senate po.
state, no? It is the Senate.
Opo, Senate.
Okay?
Ayun, being part of the law of the land and they affect our international relations, being in the nature of a contract between the parties. Next po, section 22. Ito naman po yung budgetary power ng president. The president shall submit to the Congress within 30 days from the opening of every regular session as the basis of the General Appropriations Bill. The budgetary power of the president. The president is entrusted by the Constitution with the task of preparing the budget of receipts and expenditures based on existing and proposed revenue measures and other sources of financing. Examples po dito is yung loan. And of submitting it to the Congress within 30 days, kagaya po ng sabi kanina, from the opening of the regular session. The budget thus submit shall be the submitted shall be the basis of the General Appropriations Act to be enacted by the Congress of the following year. Lastly, yung Section 23, next po. The prerogative to address and appear before Congress. The President shall address the Congress to give information on the state of the nation. Ito po yung SONA natin. And to recommend to the consideration of the legislative body such measures as they may deem necessary and proper. However, such measures are, of course, merely proposals. They have no binding effect until enacted by the Congress. The address may contain guidelines of national policy, and the President may appear before Congress at any other time they may choose after the opening of its regular session. Ayun na po. That would be all for the report of Executive Department. Thank you po.
Okay, so you talk of Section 22, the budgetary power of the President. And under this section, the President shall submit to Congress the General Appropriations Act or the national budget. Okay, so my question is, since the President enjoys prerogative to submit budget proposals to Congress, and Congress, in the exercise of its legislative power to enact or make laws, and since the President submitted, for example, a 1 trillion budget proposal, can Congress, in the exercise of its legislative power to legislate and enact laws, can Congress, for example, the 1 trillion submitted budget by the President, can Congress make it 2 trillion? Meaning, can Congress increase the budget submitted by the President in exercise of its supreme legislative power to legislate? The last reporter may answer.
I think, sir, hindi po. Kasi po, ang ginagawa lang po ng legislative or ng Congress is to check lang po yung paggagamitan ng budget na proposed.
Sa pag-check nila, kulang yung sinabit ng Presidente. It is in their power to increase it?
Wala po akong sufficient knowledge about that, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay, so maybe that will also be included in your final. So you better research on the matter. Okay. Who's the next reporter?
Good afternoon po, sir. Group B po yung next reporter. Wait. So for the Group B po, we'll be discussing the 1987, the Article 6 of 1987 Philippine Constitution, which is yung the Legislative Department of the Philippines. So for this report po, we divide this one into 5 sections. First one is the section 1 to 4.
we'll discuss overview of legislative department, and then from section 5 to 8, we will be discussing House of Representative, brief history of legislative department, and then for the 9 to 18, it's about the Senate of the Philippines, and then for section 19 to 25, we'll be discussing process of legislation, and then for the last part, section 26 to 32, we will be discussing the limitations of legislative department.
Okay, you proceed.
So, good afternoon po, sir. I'm Miko Salonga. I'll be discussing the Section 1 for the Legislative Branch of the Philippines. So, the legislative power shall be vested in the Congress of the Philippines, which is of a Senate and a House of the Representative. Section 1 vests all legislative powers in Congress, which means the President and the Supreme Court cannot assert legislatively an authority. Next is the Section 2. The Section 2, the Senate shall be having 24 senators who will be elected by the voters. It is as may be provided by the law. Section 3, no person shall be senator unless he is kung hindi po siya natural born of citizen of the Philippines. And
what is the definition of a natural born Filipino citizen?
Your parents are both Filipino.
Meaning,
You are a natural born Filipino citizen.
both your parents. Kaya kapag halimbawa, nabuntis yung nanay mo dito sa Pilipinas at ang tatay mo Amerikano, ngayon yung tatay mo dinala ka sa Amerika, hindi kasama yung nanay mo, anak, o anong status mo? Are you a natural born Filipino citizen?
Probably no na po, sir, kasi yung the father po, right, sir, yung foreigner.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's an American.
Yeah, hindi na po yung natural born Filipino.
Okay.
Kasi meron na po siyang foreign.
I-reverse ko. So, yung mother mo ay Amerikana, ang tatay mo Filipino, so nandun sila sa Amerika. So, habang binubuntis ka sa Amerika, your mother decided to be separated to your father. So, yung father mo is a Filipino.
Still no po, sir, kasi doon ko po pinanganak sa Amerika eh. Once na pinanganak ko po doon sa States, you are natural, sa kanila po yun eh, sa batas po nila yun.
So you are
citizen
not
ka
a natural born.
Me po? Or the example?
Hindi. Okay. So you are both wrong, no? A
Okay.
natural born, ang ibig sabihin, either of your parents is a Filipino citizen, Filipino.
Oh, okay, sir.
Pero alin man, ibig sabihin, tatay mo, ang tamang pinanganak, basta ang nanay mo o tatay mo o Filipino, Filipino yung, yung lang ay Filipino or tatay mo lang ay Filipino. So kahit
Okay po, sir.
ikaw pinanganak sa parents mo ay Filipino, natural born ka. When during her presidential bid last 2010, I suppose. No, she was challenged before the Supreme Court because according to her opponents, she was not a natural born Filipino citizen because she was a foundling. No, a foundling, di ba iniwan siya sa simbahan ng Haro, Iloilo, inampun lang siya ni FPJ at ni Susan Roses without knowing who was her real biological parents. Okay? So no the decision of the Supreme Court. Anyone who can answer?
Sir, nagpuputol-putol po yung audio niyo po. Hindi po namin gaano maintindihan yung
What is the
question.
decision of the Supreme Court?
Hello, sir. Medyo malabo po yung audio niyo po, sir.
Hello? Oh, anyway, pakinggan nyo na lang. So the Supreme Court, but it is a privilege to be enjoyed by Filipinos only. Okay? So you get familiar on the case of Senator Grace Poe because it will be included as one of the topics in your final examination. Okay? So you proceed. Who is the reporter?
Okay po, sir. Next slide na po tayo. So, section 4. Sila yung mga tigagawa po ng batas at naghahawak po ng mga bills. Pwede sila magpatalsik ng mga opisyal and nakalagay din po dyan sila po yung upper house. Umaga po sila po yung Supreme. Sila lang po yung group na may hawak ng batas. Kada term po ng 6 years, di sila pwede tumakbo ng pangatlong termino. Hanggang 2 lang po. So,
Sino to? You are talking of whom? can you repeat what you are telling us? Who is this group?
Hello po sir, nawawalan po kasi ako ng connection.
Yeah, can you repeat who is this group you're talking about?
The Senate po yan, sir.
Okay, you repeat the Senate is what?
Shall be 6 years and shall commence unless otherwise provided by law. On the 13th day of June, next following of their elections. No senator shall serve for more than 2 consecutive terms. Yun po yung sinasabi ko. Tinagalog ko lang po.
So, ibig sabihin, how many years silang pwede maging senator? Maximum.
Six po, sir. Or
Come again? What is the maximum term of office? You repeat again the provision.
Sir, hello po.
6 years
6 years is the
maximum po. Senate.
so maximum of Can you repeat the provision, the exact provision?
Sir, sorry po nawawalan po ng connection yung reporter. Bali, based on the provision po, no senator shall serve for more than 2 consecutive terms. So, meaning po, yung 1 term is equivalent to 6 years. So, if ever na tumakbo po ulit siya for another term, that would be another 6 years po. So, maximum is 12. And then, after that second term po na nanalo ulit siya, if ever, bawal na po ulit siyang tumakbo for election. So, technically 12 years po yung maximum.
Okay, so that is correct. So the maximum period is 12 years. And after 12 years, nagpahinga siya, can he or she still run in the Senate after the maximum period of 12 years? So nagkaroon siya ng 12 years, nagpahinga siya after that. Then the next election, can he or she run again?
Yes po. Like for example, tapos na po yung second term niya and then nagpahinga po siya for 1 term, which is 6 years. He or she can run again for the office. And then same pa rin po na privilege na tumakbo for 2 consecutive term. Mostly po ng senator, I think ganun po yung nangyayari.
Okay, so that is very clear in the provision. Okay, so you continue. Please continue the report.
Hello po. Sir,
Okay, you proceed.
nawawalan po kasi ako ng internet. Sorry po, sir. Natapos na po ba yung section 4?
Yes, the next section.
Pinaka-overview lang po nung sa amin is the legislative branch is authorized to make laws, alters, and repeal them through the power vested in the Philippine Congress. So it exists to create and promote a national perspective on national policy in order to build a prosperous, secure, honest, and democratic nation. So yung examples po ng senators is sila Tito Soto, Ralph Recto, Joel Villanueva. So they call themselves upper court. And the House of Representatives po has the power to legislate money must originate from the lower house. Example po rin si Lord Alan J. Basco. So next na po sa section 5.
Hello po. Good afternoon. Naririnig po ba?
Yes, you proceed.
Okay. Good afternoon po. My name is Alfie Marie Sid po, and then ang itatakal ko po is about brief history ng legislative department, and then the section 5 until section 8 po. So first is the proclamation number 3 of 1986, which is the Fifth Republic from 1987 up to present. Ayan. On March 25, 1986, President Aquino revolutionary government by a virtue of Presidential Proclamation of 1986, which suspended some provisions of the 1973 Constitution and promulgated in its stead transitory constitution. This effectivity abolished the Batasang Pambansa, a constitutional commission tasked with the drafting a new charter was created by a virtue of Proclamation number 9 issued on April 23, 1986. So ayan, before po pumunta sa Proclamation of 1986, ayan, i-discuss ko po muna yung transition nito from the Fourth Republic, which is the martial law, hanggang sa Proclamation of 1986. So ayan, on September 23, 1972, President Ferdinand Marcos issued a Presidential Proclamation number 1081, placing the country under martial law. So yung sa pagde-declare niya po, sa taong ngayon, sa pagdedeklara niya ng martial law, yun yung both chambers of Congress, and then nung ipinatupad na ni Marcos yung 1973 Constitution, na kung saan sa taong iyon or sa pagpoproklama ng Constitution na yun, andun na yung effectivity ng pag-abolish sa bicameral legislature rather, and replace it with the cameral legislators. So ayan, under martial Marcos created the Batasang Bayan in 1976 by virtue of Presidential Decree number 995 to serve a Legislative Advisory Council, a quasi-legislative machinery to normalize the legislative process for the eventual actualization of the 1973 Constitution. Then under po nun, the Batasang Bayan would be 1978 by an elected unicameral body, which are the interim Batasang Pambansa or the IBP parliamentary legislature as provided in 73 Constitution. And then ayan, by the year of 1978, April 7, naganap na yung election, and then those elected to the RDP would be called the Mambabatas Pambansa or the Assemblymen, who would be elected per region via block voting system. Ayan, by the year of 1986, nagkaroon po ng snap presidential election wherein sinasabi na Marcos and his running mate, former Senator and Assemblyman Arturo Tolentino, were proclaimed by the Batasang Pambansa as the winner of the election. However, a popular revolt installed opposition leaders Corazon Aquino and Salvador Laurel as president and vice president. Ayan. By the year of 1986, on March 25, President Aquino declared a revolutionary government by virtue of Presidential Proclamation number 1986, which suspended some provisions of 1973 and 1973 Constitution and promulgated and its transitory constitution, and then tuluyan na pong na-abolish yung batasang pambansa, and yung Constitutional Commission ay na-create na by a virtue of Proclamation number 9 issued on April 23, 1986. Ayan. Following the overwhelming ratification of the 1987 Constitution through a national plebiscite held on February 2, 1987, the 1987 Constitution finally came into full force and in effect on February 11, 1987. It re-established a bicameral legislature composed of the House of Representatives and the Senate, much like the way it was before martial law. The former being much larger in composition, reopened in the Batasan Pambansa, while the Senate, still with its 24 members, returned to legislative building. Ayan. Next po, dadako na po tayo sa section 25.
I'm ready. Hello.
Hello po. Next slide na po.
Okay. You proceed.
Okay po, thank you, sir. Ayan, sa Section 5 naman, under Section 5, basically, ang nilalaman po nito is yung composition and selection of representatives, wherein nakalagay sa unang bullet, the House of Representatives shall be composed of not more than 250 members known as the congressman. They are elected from legislative among the provinces, cities, and metropolitan Manila area in accordance with the number of their respective inhabitants. And those, as provided by law, shall be elected through a party list system of registered national, regional, and sectoral parties or organization. Bullet 2, police representatives shall constitute 20% of the total number of representatives, including those under the party list. And yung mga representatives from party list, meron lamang silang three consecutive terms, wherein kalahati ng uupo ay allocated to the representatives and shall be filled as approved by law or by selection or election from the labor, peasant, urban, poor, indigenous cultural communities, women, youth, and such other sectors, maliban lang sa sector. And then yon sa bullet 3, each representative district comprise as far as practicable contagious bawat probinsya na mayroong at least 250 inhabitants, kinakailangan na meron silang at least one representative. And then for the fourth bullet, within 3 years within 3 following years, the return of every census, the Congress shall make a reappointment of legislative districts based on the standards provided in the section. Sa section 6 naman po, ito ay naglalaman ng criteria or qualification of a member of a House of Representatives, na kung saan ang isang representative daw ay merong 5. Una is a natural-born citizen of the Philippines. Next is at least 25 years old of age on the day of election. Third one is able to read and write. Pang-apat, except for a party list representative, a registered voter in the district in which he shall be elected. And lastly, a resident for a period of not less than 1 year preceding the day of the election. Ayan. Next po is Section 7, na kung saan ito ay sa terms o termino ng isang miyembro ng House of Representatives, na kung saan the members of the House of Representatives shall be elected for a 3 years term, which will begin unless otherwise provided by law at noon at the 30th day of June next following their election. And then no member of the House of Representatives shall serve more than 3 consecutive terms. And lastly, voluntary renunciation of the office for any length of time will not be considered as an interruption in the of his service. Ayan. Next po is Section 8 na kung saan naglalaman tungkol sa election day of the senators and members of the House of Representatives wherein unless otherwise provided by law, the regular election of the senators and the members of the House of Representatives shall be held on the second Monday of May. Yun lang po. Thank you.
Okay.
Sir, good afternoon po. Class rep po ako ng sir, PH3. May meeting po kasi kami sir after po ngayon po ng class natin. 4:30.
May klase na kayo?
Meeting po after po nito, 4:30 po.
Okay. So how many more reporters do we need to finish in the legislative department?
For our group po, sir, 4 pa po.
5 po.
Ay, 5 po pala, sorry. 5 po.
Okay. So we continue next meeting.